game for Utah State. You know what?
Late though.
From time to time, we have certain games where you can say this was a Mason Falsliv game or this was an MJ Collins game. Last night, I want to say it was a Zach Keller game. I mean, Utah State has unlocked a new level if Zach Keller plays like he has been playing recently. And this wasn't just a one-off. Like, he's been playing a little bit better the last couple of games. And if Utah State gets that kind of contribution from Zach Keller, watch out, NCAA, not just Mountain West. And you got your center who's playing like he was playing, 10 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal, impacting the game on both ends. I mean, he got the game going for Utah State. He was, the first 7 points came from Zach Keller. And so and then it's a little bit quieter for him after that. But if Utah State has unlocked, if that coaching staff has somehow figured out a way to get his confidence going and his contributions flowing for Utah State, wow. I mean, it adds a whole new wrinkle and element to how dangerous Utah State can be.
Yeah, and you look over the last 3 games, and this is where we're kind of seeing a bit more of an explosion for him, because like his first 22 games of the season, he played more than 15 minutes twice. He has played more than 15 minutes in each of his last 3 games. 22 minutes against Fresno, 16 against Memphis, 23 against Boise last night. And in those 3 games, he's averaging 8.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, shooting 75% from the field, and he's 4 of 6 on 3-pointers. So, and I think before this 3-game stretch, he'd only attempted 4 3-pointers and made 1. He's now made 4 3-pointers in the last 3 games alone, more than as many as he'd attempted in, again, 4 months of play. So,
well, I mean, your game last night, he went 1 for 2 from 3. Carson Templin went 1 for 2 from 3. Gary Clark was perfect in his 1 attempt.
Yeah,
your big guys are dropping 3-pointers on your eye.
Yeah,
man, good luck.
If the Aggies get 3 3-pointers from their bigs collectively, that's a good game. Now, it just so happened that each of them hit 1, but like, say Carson hits 2 and Zach hits 1. I don't know if Gary is going to be shooting a ton of them, but like, it was weird when he shot it because he's been somebody who's been like, wide open from 3. They leave him open. He's shot 3-pointers at his previous stops. He's hit double-digit 3-pointers each season leading up until now. But he's only yesterday, that was his first make of the season, and he'd only attempted 1 or 2, and I think it was like end of the shot clock or something like that.
Now, this is we're getting into the stage of the season where teams have a lot of film on who you are. And so it's hard to introduce new wrinkles.
It's hard to surprise anybody.
To surprise anybody. And then Utah State throws out a game where it's all of its big guys are dropping 3-pointers on the opponent. So now opposing coaches are like, well, crap. Now we got to account for that.
Yeah.
And so we can't just leave him open because he might pop a 3 in our eye. So we have to honor and recognize that, which just creates more spacing and more opportunity for everybody else.
And that's where, and I want to see if I can find lineup data for, I don't know if I can, where I can isolate it to certain parts of the season, but by my own memory, I don't remember seeing a whole lot of Carson Templin and Zach Keller. I know they had played before these last few games, like, because I had checked it recently, and there were some possessions that came from earlier in the season. But Zach Keller and Carson Templin weren't playing very much. Heck, during the game last night, Carson Templin comes to the scorer's table right before like the under 16 media timeout or something like that. And I tweeted out and they're saying, well, Zach Keller, he's got 7 points, but he's coming out because Carson Templin's coming in. And then Carson comes in for Adlin and you're playing Zach and Carson. Like, it was something that we've seen so little of that I just made the assumption this is how the rotation goes. But no, they kept Zach Keller in, and that gives the Aggies more size. But with Zach and even Carson, who's shooting 3s a little bit better for the whole season, but also of late, they can still be a 4 or even 5 out team with Zach and Carson on the court. And that's something that's incredibly valuable because suddenly these teams are starting to see, oh, Zach is shooting threes, Carson is hitting threes. And you think that you can just pack it in the paint while keeping a few guys out to defend MJ or Mason. And Drake's actually probably the biggest non-shooter on the team, where he's really struggling from three. But you think you can just kind of sneak out on those guys, but the other two guys aren't going to shoot it from outside, so we can cheat off of them if they're hanging out in the corner. No, you can't do that anymore. You can't. You got to pay attention to Zach Keller on the pick and pop. If you leave him wide open on the wing, he'll drain a three on you.
You can go with a big lineup and not feel like we're giving anything up, particularly because sometimes you go big just for defensive purposes, but because you're going to give up some things maybe offensively, or there may be reasons for that other way around. But Utah State can, if they've got their guys playing with confidence right now who can contribute like they are contributing, then like, okay, you want to try to throw out a different lineup at us? All right, we can roll with that.
Yeah.
And we can roll with that and force you to make further adjustments because we can go with different lineups. We can go jumbo, we can go lightning, we can go whatever combination now with the lineup that feels comfortable and that these coaches have trust in.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Is like if the other team goes big and the Aggies feel like they have to go big, they can do that, and their offense isn't sacrificed, and you get the defensive benefit of being able to match the team. Like when they're playing Memphis or Boise State, where they've got a few more bigs, you go big, match their size, so you have that defensive matchup that you want, and you don't sacrifice anything on offense. As you said, you don't have that trade-off where you lose spacing on offense for the sake of a better defense. You can essentially have the best of both worlds. And if the other team wants to go small, well, you throw Adelaine at the 4, or even throw, MJ Collins, Mason, or Colby King, whoever they think would be the power forward, in a 4-guard lineup, and you run that. And you have the defensive advantages you want there while not sacrificing anything on offense. And this goes back to what we kept talking about in the offseason and to some degree through this, is that it's not just that the Aggies have depth, it's that they have the right kind of depth. They have the right mix of players. You wish they could have a couple more, at least one or two 7-footers where you could be able to go really big. Yeah. Like some of the teams, that's kind of the one thing they're missing. But as far as everything else, other than these ultra big lineups, the Aggies can put together any kind of lineup and have it work. They can play 2 bigs. They can play 4 guards. They can play more versatile players at the power forward like Adlin. And it works. And that's something that's helped the Aggies. Like, it helps you avoid teams that are matchup problems. Like, fewer teams are matchup problems against you. Because last year, Boise was kind of a matchup problem in some ways. Colorado State, they caused some matchup problems. Fresno State, like, there were teams that Utah State was probably better than on paper, or that they were better than on paper, but because of matchup issues, they just really struggled against. And now, like, maybe there's some teams that are still matchups, UNLV in Grand Canyon to some degree, but a lot of teams that would otherwise, present challenges with their types of lineups, the Aggies have enough versatility in their units that they can match what their opponent does, or counter it, or do whatever they want to be able to throw a wrench into what their opponent is doing.
Yeah, super fun to watch. And the defense, I know we were talking maybe a little bit more on some of our keys last night offensively. We did talk about some defensive keys, but the defense of this team is just playing elite. But they still have some moments where they're a little inconsistent. But I think the start was a little bit shaky, where they were allowing a few things, but the way they dug in and just really made life miserable on Boise was a lot of fun.
Well, like, some teams are just going to get hot from the field at times, but and there were a few early shots that it felt like Boise was able to get fairly easily, but for most of the game, really outside of that 9-0 run that Boise went on, Utah State was able to make shots hard for them. And one thing we kind of talked, or at least that I brought up, was, get ahead of Boise State and they start chucking kind of desperation 3-pointers. They ended up doing a lot of that. And they missed a ton of 3-pointers.
Yeah.
And heck, they missed so many of them badly. Like bad enough that I was watching that thinking, yeah, that's going to miss the rim by like a foot. Like they were hitting only the backboard on like 4 or 5 of their threes. Like misses bad enough that the Aggies fumbled the rebound because it came at them too fast. They were expecting to at least hit the rim. So really the one thing that I would say with Boise State was a little iffy was defensive rebounding, where they allowed 13 offensive rebounds, although I need to figure out what their actual offensive rebounding percentage was, because they done shot 37%, which when you shoot horribly, you tend to get more offensive rebounds because more offensive rebounds exist to be had. But it's still, like, I think Utah State just did incredibly well. There were stretches where, let's see, Boise State had a stretch where they missed 9 straight field goal attempts. They had a stretch where they missed 12 straight field goal attempts. Mind you, they made 6 field goals in the final. They made 6 straight field goals to end the game. The last 4.5 minutes, this is when it was a 20-point margin, so it didn't really matter at that point. But they made 6 straight field goal attempts to end the game, and that got them to 37%. If they didn't hit all 6 of those, they probably would have shot a season low. The previous season low, I think, was 33%. So making their final 6 shots of the game, one, kept it within 20 points, but also helped them avoid scoring under 50 points and shooting a season low from the field. Of course, the 56 points was a season low in points overall. But this was also a low possession game. It was something I kind of noticed at the end is that according to Ken Palm, there were 60 possessions in this game. The stat broadcast had 57. Either number is like the lowest the Aggies have been. Like typically they're in 65 to 70, 72 range. So that's the thing. If you see 75 points for the Aggies, you think, oh, that's kind of low. If the Aggies played the same number of possessions in this Boise game as they did in Memphis, they'd have scored 90. Which that also does factor into Boise probably would have scored like 65. But
yeah,
that's still a good defensive game for, something that Coach Calhoun mentioned and something that we both talked about on the show. Boise State was the hottest offensive team in the conference, one of the hottest in the nation. Like, this defensive performance is as impressive, if not maybe more impressive, than what the Aggies did to Colorado State when they held them. When Colorado State was like top 10 in the country, they were like number 1 in like field goal percentage. I think they were number 1 in 3-point percentage. Like, whatever they put into the air.
Yeah, the last 4 games, they're scoring 86 or more.
Yeah. And you hold Boise State to under 1 point per possession when they'd been one of the best offenses in the country. So
a couple quick more texts before we hit our timeout. 9315 saying that Keller's nickname should be Nintendo because he is a cheat code like the one in Mario that helps you skip leaves to get ahead to the end faster.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Keller wasn't necessarily the one who was helping them get ahead. He was the one who kind of kept the team alive a little bit because, like, pretty much everyone for Utah State struggled early on offense except for Zach Keller. Like, Mason went 1 of 6 in the first half, and I swear there was like an anti-gravity, orb in the rim, like because his shot would like roll around the rim, in and then out, like on layups, shots he normally makes, and shots he eventually made in the second half. Just in the first half, couldn't make it to save his life for no explainable reason whatsoever.
Then 6543, looking at bracket matrix, if we are an 8 seed, there are some very good 9 seed teams which are a concern.
And welcome to the NCAA tournament where every team is good.
Yeah. Well, that 8-9s, like those are teams that are basically the same. Their resumes are virtually the same. So, yeah, because right now, looking at bracket matrix, Utah State's an 8 seed. So the 9 seeds would include Auburn, SMU, Central Florida, and St. Mary's.
Yeah, like Utah State is going to face a really good team.
Those are all good teams.
They're going to face a good team in the NCAA tournament. They're going to face an at-large, high major team, or an at-large, a mid-major team that's really solid. So you're going to be facing teams essentially of the caliber like San Diego State and New Mexico. Like those are the teams that And we get up for saying, here's the marquee matchups. These are games that Utah State could lose. Like the most losable game on Utah State's schedule is at San Diego State. And they're like barely projected to win that right now. And that is a team that is outside of the tournament. So imagine a team that's inside the tournament. That's who the Aggies are going to be projected to face. So yeah, there are no automatic wins in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and that's why you don't let off just because you've got the 1 seed secured in your conference tournament, because you're trying to get a higher seed in the NCAA tournament. That's ultimately what matters most.
Yeah.